Good morning. Welcome to Collision Coffee Talk. It's December. How did we get to December? Yeah. Okay. All right, just fair warning. This one is going to be long because last week I was short, because holiday week, and I skipped over a bunch of things I was going to talk about. And so I thought, well, I'd talk about them on the December 1st episode. And then more stuff happened last week that got even crazier. So then I had to start trying to cut stuff out. It's been a crazy morning and I need more coffee. Um, you're probably going to have to watch this one or listen to this one in quarters. It's going to be that long. For those of you that listen at work, you get it to work and you pop your headphones in and you're in the shop, which at this point, I would just love to go back to the shop. Like I don't want to adult anymore in a way. I just want to I want to wash cars or I want to be a porter. I just I don't want to think. I'm seriously, they're building a Bucky's like one exit down from me. And then I found out what they pay the average salary at a Bucky's, and I'm thinking, I just want the job that yell where you like yell hot brisket, like in just that maybe because last week was a lot. And I've got a trial that starts in the first part of 2026, and that's suddenly it's the flurry of motions and just last week was a lot. And I'm sure it was a lot for everybody else because of holiday week and everything. And I thought I was going to take it easy. I think I even told everybody last Monday it's going to be an easy week. Everybody was off on my team. We usually try to shut down Thanksgiving week and we try to shut down Christmas week so that nobody has to use like vacation to, like enjoy your families and have a life. And so I was left alone to my own devices. I just want to pre-apologize to Melanie and Holly that are coming back this week. Mm, sorry. And Avery. So sorry. We are going to be launching a second podcast here in the next couple of weeks where we're going to talk about cases. Like we're going to go, and each case will probably be 3 or 4 episodes. I feel like it's like a murder mystery podcast kind of thing. And so the first episodes of that have been recorded and they're being edited. So it's not this live thing where I just turn on my camera at 4 o'clock in the morning and talk to space. It's actually like interviews and people and documents and court documents and all kinds of things. And so that's going to start. It's going to be like our Christmas release so that people can spend the Christmas holidays, Christmas and into the new year. Um, on this Tesla case. So, all right, like I said, I'm going to just pre-apologize. This one is going to be long, but we've got some fun things to talk. Well, they're fun for me. They're probably not going to be fun for a lot of the people I'm going to talk about today, and I'm talking about you. So just get ready for it. All right. We're going to talk about State Farm's selection of Gerber and what that really means. So I made the little video and said, hey, I'm getting recorded phone calls. I'm getting voicemails that adjusters are leaving on customers' voicemails. I'm getting all these things about the State Farm Gerber thing. And so I posted it up, and then everybody's like, oh, that's nothing new. It's just steering. They've been trying to get, no, no, this is new. This is not what you think steering is. So I guess I'm going to have to explain a little bit more. We'll do that. We're going to talk about why the trade publications in this industry are just absolute trash. And really, shops, you need to refuse them delivering. I know that you get them for free. You're gonna just this one's terrible. Like what they publish and who they think is an expert. Um, and I gave you like 2 weeks to take it down, and you didn't. So I'm gonna blast you. All right. Understanding your tools. We're gonna talk about how that goes back to a general claims memo from State Farm back in the 90s. Consolidation in materials. Big announcement last week. I don't know why you would make that announcement during Thanksgiving. I wasn't really pleased with that whole timing issue, but it really doesn't affect me that much. I started getting a bunch of calls and people going, "Oh, hey, what do you know about this?" And I'm like, "Absolutely nothing." Which I guess I can say thank you to some board members of SCRS for that. So thanks, guys. I appreciate that one. I didn't have to deal with that last week, which is amazing. Ford and Amazon are cutting some deals that everyone needs to pay attention to. State Farm mitigation fail. We'll talk about a letter that they started circulating probably the week before last, but I got tons of them last week. Everybody kept sending them in. Honda and Aftermarket Headlamps, we'll revisit that one again and how that's really what happened with the Kappa recall list and some other things. OEM inspections, cough, cough, General Motors, buck up and pay attention, especially since you're signing off and allowing MSOs to self-certify. I'm not really sure what happened at General Motors. It's like used to be one of my favorite companies. Mm. I'm a GM girl, right? Like I've got Chevy trucks. I've got a 99 Tahoe, a 97 pickup truck. Like I like Chevys. Anyway, what waived rights and claims really mean, and we'll talk more about artificial intelligence and its fails, particularly how that's sort of going to relate to collision repair. If shops are dumb enough to keep using an estimating system's artificial intelligence. So if you're using CCC's Assist Jumpstart AI, you have a huge problem. Pay attention. It's sort of at the end of the show. So if you have to drop this up in quarters, I completely understand. All right, let's talk about the big announcement last week. I there was we first had this one. We had Axo and Exalta are combining the coatings companies, and everybody kind of like flipped off on that. And then on the tail end of the first of the week, we had an announcement that Wesco was acquiring, or it's technically the private equities company that has Wesco is also acquiring NCS, so National Coatings and Supplies. I'm just really super excited. I didn't have to deal with this one last week. I can't even tell you how excited I am. And so that caused like a lot of ripples around the industry, and mostly people who get their service from NCS wondering how that was going to affect their like what happens now. I had shops and I had MSOs emailing me going, "What do we do now?" And I think a lot of that was when you're a big company, you sort of think that competitiveness gives you better deals. Like I need, the farm went back to having multiple estimating systems. So they got CCC and Mitchell. They thought, hey, we need to have them bidding against each other so that we get the best deal. And I still meet with MLOs. There's the national big ones and then there's regional ones. And they still think that sometimes having two jobbers allows them to get the best deal. And so some of them were like, what do we do now that we're going to lose our leverage and whatever. Historically, if we go back, Wesco got Kimberly, Wesco got English Color down, which is in my state, we have English Color. Nothing really changed. Those locations stayed the same. I don't even think there was a rebranding. I think the names of those things sounded the same. So I don't think anything changes. I think announcing it was not bright. I really wouldn't announce it at all. I mean, when we look at what the insurance companies are doing, trying to cut paint material deals, what consolidation within the industry does is it makes it easier for insurers to leverage control. So just like we have these shops that think that, oh, if I have two companies, I can leverage them to get a better deal. The insurers look to leverage to get better deals for themselves, which really aren't great for body shops. The reason we didn't really explore that much in the late 90s to early 2000s was that it was too fragmented of an industry. There were too many jobbers and distributors and too many shops and too many of this and too many of that. And so if you think about herding cats, if there's 1,000 cats, that's a difficult operation. If I can cut that down to 5 cats, a little bit easier for me to herd them. And so that's what happened when we had big MSOs happen, your Service Kings, your Calibers, your Crashes, your Gerbers, as that consolidation of interest happened, that's easier for an insurer to leverage that. Same thing in the paint and material world. That there's less jobbers, it's easier for conversations to be had. It's not a bad thing to acquire those. It's a bad thing when everyone wants to brag, so you make it public, and if you're not rebranding, you are to just not let people know. But here we are. So we'll see how that goes. You announce it in November, which means you're not doing anything until probably at least February of next year. We'll start to see how that all looks. But make no mistake, consolidation in our industry was an opportunity for insurers more than it was an opportunity for other people. We'll continue to see that as that goes. We're all, I think everybody's going to watch the Boyd Gerber thing and see what happens there. And you've got paint companies entering this, like Sherwin-Williams started offering like 80% off lists to some of these MSOs. because they want to get their foot in the door. And I don't think what they realize is you're not helping. You're not helping. Once you race to the bottom and you offer that, that's the new expectation. It's not something that you do to just sort of get your foot in the door. That's the expectation. So this cannibalism that happens where everybody just keeps trying to one up the other, which is really not upping. I guess everybody tries to one down the other on this race is just eventually it's extinct. But I don't know if these companies think that it's all going to be okay. I don't know, but the stability of the independent repair is really the number one goal. The biggest thing that we have to think about right now is the stability of the independent. That's really the only thing left between this completely falling off a ledge and what does it look like, barring federal involvement, which federal involvement is not off the table right now, considering what happened after the 2007, 2008 recession. Okay, Ford and Amazon have announced a deal, and the things that I want you guys to pay attention to on this is twofold. One, there's the Amazon that we all shop on, and we have the app on our phone, and we do all of that, right? And that's very, I'm on it all the time. I have an Amazon truck almost every other day at the house. I'm guilty of that. Like if I have to think about driving somewhere to get something, I'm like, if I order it, it'll just be here tomorrow, so it'll be fine. But there's two sides to Amazon. There's the servers and computer component of Amazon, AWS. You've probably seen the AWS commercials on television talking about how they integrate, companies and data and do all those things. And then there's the forward consumer portal sales site sort of thing. While those are two separate towers, they also very much intertwine. I want you to pay attention lately to all the companies that have announced that they're going to AWS. So Amazon is becoming their data. That's their servers, that's their whatever. Those companies, when you look at it, because remember we talked about the bragging, everybody's got to brag. There's a press release sent out in the background. Now we don't get them in our collision repair industry because our trade press is if it's not a direct press release to them, they just sort of miss 99% of what goes on. But you've got like CCC and 3M, and you've got everybody wrapped up in AWS. And now you have OEs wrapped up in AWS. So as they start to put that together, that allows them to do things online through the portal. So once we get your data and we have all that, and we understand your inventory and what's where and what's happening, then we can put this up to a consumer facing portal, so to speak, and make it work a whole lot easier. So Ford and Amazon announced this partnership. Just like some of the others that you've seen, it starts with new car sales and used car sales. So this one is Ford will start selling its certified pre-owned inventory through Amazon. They want to tell you it's okay. Like, don't worry about it. You get to have the shopping experience online, but you'll still do delivery and take your service and everything out of dealership. Um, the dealerships, the dealership groups, so National Dealership Auto Dealers Association, so NADA that we're used to, is very aware that this is treading on being relative, like still being relative to the consumer. That owning that purchase experience is what helps you own the service experience. If the purchase experience is sort of agnostic in a way, you do it online, then there's not the loyalty to the service. So then what happens? So you have this brewing sort of fight between several OEs and dealer associations, and that's been going on. We talked about it, I want to say 6 months ago, over some potential changes to laws in Ohio. But this continues. So as you see this happen, please understand the end game is that almost everything a body shop would need to fix a car is going to be available on Amazon, and that includes new OE parts, which means as the data starts to centralize and you think of all of this ecosystem that circles this, if the data is all centralizing within AWS, then it's very easy for, as that estimate is written on the platform in which an insurer chooses, that it goes through their filters, applies their discounts, and then everything you need for that repair is ordered and then shipped to you, whether that's seam sealers and sandpaper and paint and hoods and fenders and whatever, that is the goal, that there is Amazon sort of becomes like a distribution for collision repair. And then you'll use that as leverage with just a couple of people, because the more consolidation we have in the industry, the less meetings I have to get my way, so to speak. And then when I can cover a certain percentage of my customer base with my way, the way I want it to happen, that gives me the most financial benefit as an insurer, then it becomes very hard to um, argue that it should be another way. We talk about the chicken or the egg. In this case, the insurer is building a very, very good egg, so that when we go before states and some of you small businesses are complaining, they're going to go, but we have this full service model that takes care of the customer's happy, everything should be fine. Had a guy on LinkedIn arguing with me because the customer's happy with the experience. Why are you upset? Well, the customer's assumption is they're not going to die. So there should be some things that, like, it doesn't matter whether the customer's happy if they have no idea what's going on. And that's really what this is going to boil down to. So as we start to build that and we talk about insurers building their own perfect system, we're going to get to why State Farm and the Gerber thing is becoming what it's becoming. So um, it's not steering in the way that you think about it. Um, when we talk about this in the past, everyone always goes, well, yeah, Kristen, I mean, insurers for forever have been steering our customers away from our shop and steering them into the DRP. Yeah, that's just kind of part of the game. That's nothing new. This is new. It is incentivizing the use of a singular repairer. So it's not like we'll offer to pay up to $500 of your deductible, which is what's on the voicemails, which is what's being alleged. It's not just me. You've seen people over the last 2 weeks post it in various places all over social media. My customer just called me. They were told to take their car to Gerber. They weren't even given any other names. They were told to take it to Gerber, and then they'll waive up to $500 of their deductible. If they were calling and saying, we'll waive up to $500 of your deductible if you'll use our direct repair program, and there are X number of shops in your market in our direct repair program, that would be what you guys are traditionally used to seeing. But you have customers repeatedly given one option, one single brand option. You need to take your car to Gerber. And it's not even like it's being sort of offered as like a, well, we have this Gerber you can use. I mean, there's really intent and incentivization to get them to go to Gerber, which means State Farm and Gerber have cut some sort of deal. Whatever that is, if we go back to Gerber's earlier, like 2 weeks ago, their CEO saying, we're going to take market share in this down climate for our clients. They didn't mean consumers; they meant insurance companies. So they cut a deal somewhere, whatever it is, barring some sort of lawsuit that forces some discovery in which they have to make this known. We'll not see it very now. There's been incentivization in the national MSO accounts for years. Their DRP contract looks nothing like what the independent DRP contract looks like, whether that's a certain cash incentivization at the year where the shop has to pay back to the insurer, and they're counting that as a subro payment for numbers purposes, whatever that is. The taking over of rental. There's lots of other things there, but what it did was, and I think people have to go back a little bit longer, and the longer you're in this and you see the bigger picture. State Farm's not the first to do this. In a way, it's what Allstate did with Sterling. So you had Sterling Auto Body Centers. Allstate takes the majority ownership of it, doesn't rebrand them, still calls them Sterling. And Allstate owns body shops. We went through this for about like 10 years, and you had different states, some shop associations lobbying for legislation that said an insurer can't own a body shop. It's kind of like an insurer owning a hospital, so to speak. Well, some lessons were learned in that. I went and visited a lot of Sterlings, and in full disclosure, they were pretty decent at, like, compared to other shops in the market. They had great facilities, they had great equipment, they had great processes. They were well aware of some liability assumptions because they were owned by Allstate, and it was compared to a lot of other people in town, it was somewhat of a better repair. And so I would, walk around. Their problem is they couldn't get anyone to use them that wasn't necessarily an Allstate customer. Okay, here's the kicker of it. Those shops weren't empty. Like when I would go and visit them, it wasn't like they were sitting around picking their nose and they didn't have any work to do. They had the Allstate work. What I found interesting was that they kept wanting to get other insurers. Well, now other insurers, I don't want to send my customers to an Allstate body shop. So of course, other insurers were not inclined to put them on the DRP program. But but when we look at it, you couldn't make really good money on Allstate cars because they wanted to control what the repair cost was. You needed other people in your shop so that you could spread out cost. It's always been that way. When you look at shops that do DRP, well, this DRP pays a little bit less, but this one pays a lot more. When I was managing State Farm's DRP program, I used to hear all the time, "Oh, we love State Farm. You guys pay the best, right? We want all your work we can get." And then they would complain that, well, maybe the Allstate work wasn't as profitable or the Progressive work wasn't as profitable. You were balancing across multiple people and you were willing to do different rates. You would do this rate for this insurer and that one for another one, which is when we came back and said, okay, favored nation, nobody gets it cheaper than we do, so to speak. So we've always done that. Shops have always, you make a little here to give a little here. That's what our jobbers do when they cut deals, right? This shop over here gets a little bit bigger discount because I got these 10 shops over here that don't have that bigger discount. It's that variety in the marketplace that makes things work. When you take away the variety, the profitability was not there. Sterling couldn't necessarily keep up. Allstate had to let it go. It wasn't working out for them. It wasn't that the repairs weren't working out. I sort of liked that the liability was you had a little extra skin in the game. And when I would meet with the Sterling people and I would go, I felt better about what I was seeing there than what I was seeing in a lot of other places. But the profitability just wasn't working out. They couldn't get variety in service. So we've had that before where an insurer has tried to say, I'm going to set up a scenario in which this is beneficial for me and my cars are going to get fixed here. The problem is that Allstate tried to own it and couldn't make it work. Well, in this model, State Farm doesn't have to own it. They're turning Gerber into their version of Sterling, and they get everything they want. They get it for the price they want, and then they don't have to suffer from anything else. Now, State Farms have a model here before. There was a time when they tried to like stick all the eggs in the basket of rental, and Hertz made them a promise and a price that they could not say no to. Now, anybody with any like I liked the Hertz guys. They were nice people, but anybody standing there was like, there's no way you can do this. You don't have the footprint to service State Farm rental the way it should be. It was a huge disaster, like absolute disaster. State Farm had to go back and beg Enterprise to take them back. If I was Enterprise, I would have, but I would have charged a lot more. But Enterprise, the Taylor family are these really great people. They didn't punish State Farm. They let them come right back. And I was like, you got to be like, I mean, I'm in the world where I'm like, we got to send a message, right? Like we gotta let them know. Taylor family didn't feel that way. So their State Farm to this day should send the Taylor family big presents and gifts because the Enterprise saved their ass over that whole Hertz thing. But they weren't able to handle it. They didn't have the volume, they didn't have the footprint. Here's what's happening. Gerber needed to have footprint. It's why they overpaid for all the Joe Hudsons. Now they're going to have it. They are not going to be able to keep up with the service model for several reasons. One, it's going to be work that they're not ready to have in locations they're not ready to have it. And it's going to overflow them with one set of business. So, in other words, you're going to look up and you're going to have all of these Gerbers flooded and full of nothing but State Farm work. It's not going to have the right profit, the right variety that shops historically for, let's just say, the last 35 years within traditional DRP structure have had to have to sort of like balance the losing. There's no win in a DRP, but if you're going to balance the losing, that variety comes in. You're going to look up, and the Gerbers are going to be full of State Farm work, and it's going to feel awesome. You're going to think, oh my God, I got volume, because everybody seems to think volume is how you make money in this business. But you're going to have the volume, but you're going to have all of these handcuffs around that volume. And that's going to be a huge, huge problem that we're going to see. Now, where does that come into effect? Well, the other thing that State Farm had put out about the same time as all this Gerber stuff started happening was lots of shops started sending me this mitigation email. Now, it's not quite mitigation. So, State Farm, I hate to break your bubble for whoever came up with this. You personally, because I have the cases, you personally have lost lots of mitigation when silliness like this. So the magical 96-hour storage email that's going out. All right, probably 2 years ago, when I had some friends that were in leadership with Caliber, they called. We ended up talking about some changes in their contract. Um, and one of the things around it was, how are you going to handle total losses? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, we're about to see total losses spike to a level we've never seen them before. Um, are you still willing to give 30 days of free storage with no fees? And they're like, that's never been a problem. But it's about to. Okay, so now we're forwarding to 2 years. It took 2 years for this to come true. I was a little behind on my timeline. Oh well. All right. So as soon as a claim gets filed, before they've looked at the car, before there's an estimate written or whatever, State Farm seems to have started to send out this 96-hour email anytime a customer has a vehicle that is anywhere other than one of their DRPs. And if it is anywhere other than that, then they are immediately trying to get those things to a Gerber, which Gerber, you probably are going to want to, here's my tip to you. You better figure this one out. Can you imagine every State Farm adjuster in the country right now is doing everything they can to get probable total loss vehicles to a Gerber? Because that's the primary. What are you going to do when your lot is flooded with non-repairables that you've agreed to give X, however long that is, whether it's 15 days, 30 days, whatever, you've agreed to give X number of days of free storage. You're not charging fees for handling, etc. You're still going to have to write all these estimates. Where are you going to put the repairables? And like, what's your physical footprint like for space, and how are you going to handle all this? But if you are a shop and you have been getting this mitigation email, a couple of things to keep in mind. The court looks at mitigation as it is a duty in any contract, whether you're a third party, first party, whether it's a contract about a fence or whatever. There's a duty to make the loss as little as possible. Like you have to have reasonable, there are reasonable expectations for you to mitigate. The word reasonable, which we've talked about a lot, is by definition of the consumer, not by an adjuster, and specifically not by an adjuster that's never seen the car and comes up with 96 hours, like some sort of formula that they've pulled out of their head somewhere and just said, this is the reasonable amount of time. If you would see a car within 24 hours of the reported claim, we might even be able to consider that reasonable. But you guys can't see a car at all because you've got rid of all your field people, and then you expect shops to do all this crap for you for free, even if they're not on your program. So that's not reasonable. So sending out a letter before you've looked at the car or done anything to actually facilitate the handling of a claim doesn't qualify as notice of mitigation. So that's when you send out and say, hey, we're not going to be responsible for anything after this. It doesn't count. You don't have a handling timeline at all. You've just got a claim and you're already trying to say what you're not going to pay for. There's been a ton of previous cases. A lot of the mitigation cases come from the homeowners division. The principle is still the same. I can't just say I'm not going to pay for something because you as a policyholder, you had a duty to mitigate. We're not paying after any amount of days. So just a little brief from a State Farm case. Alleged breach of contract and breach of the implied covenant of good faith. So I don't have to have policy language that has timelines on it. There's this assumption of duties and that fiduciary responsibility that I'm supposed to not be a jackass. I'm called the good neighbor for a reason, right? That if I don't act in good faith and try to be fair, I don't get to make up the rules as I go along. I don't get to just decide what I do or don't want to pay for, that there has to be these reasonable expectations. So the plaintiffs argued that the insurance giant had failed to inspect the property, in connection with the claim, and failed to train and supervise the adjusters regarding the claim. Guys, this is an old case. So it's like it's even worse now, right? And then asserted that the defendant, State Farm, was untruthful regarding their claim and denied it without conducting a full and thorough investigation. So I don't just get to say I'm not paying it. I don't get to say that you had a duty to mitigate. You should have pulled your car out. Pulled it where? I have a non-drive car that has busted lines, it's leaking fluid, it's broken glass. Where did you want me to take it? It's not fair to say you would taken the control of the property away from me to a place that you pay for and it's now in your care, custody, and control. That's not reasonable either, to a certain extent. You've not looked at my car, you've not adjusted. We don't know if it's repairable, we don't know if it's total, we don't know anything, and you're putting out some arbitrary number of hours. The courts have never liked those. When you do mitigation and when you're going to try to draw a line in the sand as a claims adjuster, there are a lot of steps that you have to do, which is ensuring that you did your job first. It's not like, oh, well, I got a claim. I'm going to send out what we don't talk about. But it is interesting to see how hard every one of these letters that got sent to me last week were they're pulling it to a Gerber. And I'm thinking, this is glorious. This is what I had warned Caliber about. I was like, hey, they're going to fill you up. You're going to become their holding pen instead of Copart and IAA. You're going to be their holding pen while they try to figure out repair or total. And you're going to have all of these cars. And then what are you going to actually like? Your money only comes from repairables, but you're going to be so bogged down in all these others. How do you plan to process this? Gerber, you you may not like what's about to happen. And I think you turned this on before you even really sort of had a good grasp of what you bought with the Joe Hudsons. Um, and it's going to keep spinning. That's the whole thing about you can't put your eggs in one basket. Not because like what if State Farm pulls this contract? It's you literally can't put your eggs in one basket. You need a variety, and you need flow and turnover. And if one carrier jams you up, which is what they'll do, because in the claims department, I can promise you, nobody's worried about whether you can process it. And I bet that whoever is your national contact, your single point of contact with State Farm, is not going to turn off certain areas because the water spigot, oh my God, we're overrun. Can you turn us off claims for a couple of weeks so we can get caught up? I got a feeling that option's probably not in the contract, but some things that you want to pay attention to. Now, the other part about this is for all DRPs, is that you lose control over repair. You do. Because you know that if you wrote to fix a car the right way, you'd be off the program. Your severity would be too high. Somebody would be lecturing you on something and then you'd be in trouble. All right. This case came up, got sent to me, and I perked up a little bit because this is everything that's wrong with the DRP model right now for all insurers, not just State Farm, but it's everything that's wrong with the DRP. And it's why all the national MSOs need to be very, very careful with what you're agreeing to do, specifically around your internal ADAS, like having your own owned proprietary ADAS company serving everything. So this was a 60-year-old gentleman that was found unresponsive at a stoplight. So he's in the car, he's unresponsive. They call an ambulance, they come and take him to the hospital. He is pronounced dead at the hospital by hydrogen sulfide poisoning. So that's gas. For those of you that are ASC certified technicians and mechanics, that hydrogen sulfide is a byproduct, like the off gas of working with batteries. The family is suing Ford Motor Company and three different dealerships that serviced this 2015 C-Max hybrid. Now, what I find interesting here is I will always get people, specifically MSOs and adjusters, that tell me Cars are treated differently based on either make model. Oh, we only color sand and buff if it's a Mercedes or a Porsche, or year. Well, the car is 5 years old. It doesn't deserve that kind of care, Kristen. Like every car deserves that kind of care, whether it's a brand new with 5 miles on it or it's 10 years old with 500,000 miles on it. We treat all cars the same. We repair them all the same because here's a 2015 that's now in a court case. So then I imagine, like, think this is a service department deal, but imagine if we'd have had a 2015. Imagine if you were a shop and you tried to save something from being a total loss. Like, we need some cars to fix this month, or this insurer wants us to reduce severity so that we have more cars to repair or whatever. Imagine if you'd have saved a car. This could be any one of y'all, specifically around repair requirements, safety inspections. They believe that Bill Luke Tempe Ford dealership, Camelback Ford and Lincoln, and Sanderson Ford are also named in the suit for negligence because, end quote, they had a duty to properly inspect, properly perform any maintenance, and properly perform repairs. So in other words, it had all of the time that this car was in. So the cause of it was a tubing off the tubing wasn't installed off the battery, wasn't installed right. All of those fumes coming into the cabin. The ambulance people reported to the hospital that rotten egg smell, which is that's that sulfide. That's what we um, when you were dealing with exhaust issues, right? If it smells like rotten eggs from behind the car, but that's that byproduct, that smell. So it was ruled that this improper, tubing is part of the reason. Ford, hey, you should have designed a car better. But hey, you three different dealerships, every time this gentleman brought the vehicle in for service, you had a duty to look the car over and discover if there was anything that needed to be done and to report it back to the owner and then to make proper repairs. Now, DRPs, or even if you're not a DRP, you have a duty to tell the customer everything, one, that's wrong with their car and everything that needs to be done, not just what an insurance company will let you. And I know I've got an email from State Farm where they're telling me that they don't want body shops to explain OE repair procedures that are not covered on the estimate. In other words, don't tell the customer anything we're not doing. If it's not on the estimate, then the body shop's not supposed to talk about it. Great. They're not going to court with you. You are. Just like these three dealerships now are going to have to go to court and try to explain why they never saw this. They never warned this customer of whatever else is in the service records. I mean, that's the great thing about dealerships. Like, I'm going to get from the entire time this vehicle was purchased, for every time it's gone into a dealer, there's a service history of what was done, what the text typed in, what everything was there. Why didn't you do this? So from a body shop, you don't have to do repairs and inspections after a collision. You don't have to replace this part or whatever if the customer doesn't want it. But one, you can't not do it just because an insurance company tells you no. And then two, you can't not explain it to the customer. The only person that has the right to waive the repair is the vehicle owner, not the insurer. So if you don't want to do this, that's great. Well, as we looked at the rest of the week, coming off of SEMA, there was a presentation at SEMA. Actually, pretty good presentation. Like, I read the article, didn't watch it. Obviously, I wasn't there. Led panel discussion led by Mike Anderson, talking about safety inspections and all of the things that are being found. And like, there are shops doing them, even when insurance companies have said they're not going to pay for them. And here are the things that they're finding. And then we have a GM dealership shop, and he has posted over the last month all of the times that he's doing steering column inspections and finding damage to steering columns. Okay, DRPs, I know you're not doing them. You're not, because he's right. I mean, in this post, just the labor alone is about $2,500. So you're not doing that. It's not on your estimate. You're not doing it for free. You can tell me that you're doing, thump test and buckle testing of seatbelts for free. But beyond that, I know you're not doing any of those things. but you're not explaining it to the customer. Now, this saying on this whiteboard was posted inside a CarStar. And this one, like, really angered me when I saw it. So great, you're a CarStar shop owner and you're super proud of yourself that you're writing these motivational things on the wall in the break room for your technicians. I always have a choice. There are no victims, only volunteers. And not choosing is choosing. Consumers are not volunteers for our garbage. You can argue with me all day that they don't, oh, they should have bought a policy that had an OE, that had OE parts on it. So they didn't, or they should know better. They should do whatever. No, they shouldn't. Like the Chadwick State Farm case, the customer trusts the insurer, the customer trusts you. You're supposed to do your job, which you say you've been trained for. So if you're a CarStar and you're on the DRP programs for these insurers, one, you've probably taken iCar, or no, I know you've taken iCar, right? Because you can't be on an insurer's program until you're an iCar Platinum. There's a reason iCar Platinum is a requirement. It's because it's the get out of jail free card for the insurer at trial. Well, we decided that the shop had to be trained. We didn't know they weren't fixing cars correctly. So it all falls back on you. That's why that's in there. It's not that necessarily an insurer believes in training or whatever. It's just that it's a standard for finger pointing in a courtroom. They're iCar certified. They should have known X, Y, and Z. It's not our fault because we had standards for our shops, right? But you always have a choice. There are no victims. Yeah, there's a lot of victims in the collision repair world because we know better. And I have never had like an investigation or a deposition in which I've talked to the shop or the technician where they didn't know better. So it's true. You guys have gone to training. If you're in a CarStar, you probably have CarStar training that's separate. They used to brag about this LMS and all this training that you're going to get by being a member, right? Great. It's more you have to answer for in a deposition. Wonderful. But if we have a choice, right, then the customer needs that choice, which means you have to set them down and go, look, General Motors says that we should pull your steering column and measure it. It may not be damaged, but it could be damaged because look, here's all the people that are posting all the times they're measuring them and finding that they're damaged. What do you want me to do, Miss Smith? It's going to cost maybe at least $3,000. Your insurance company may not pay for it. You want to cover that or not? But if you're not having that conversation at all, then you're going to be in the same chair like these three, four service departments are on a 2015 C-Max talking about gas poisoning from a battery tubing. You're going to be there. Now, if you're not like doing a complete walk around, that's why Larry always says you got to pre-measure every car, even for a key scratch, because it's not about that. It's about you knowing the overall status and health of the vehicle that's about to come in your care, custody, and control. And then do you have a duty to explain to a customer, hey, we were going through your car, we were checking it out. These are some things we found. You can say no, but it's an informed no so that you're not a victim. You can volunteer for for not doing the safety checks and having those risks to your own life, so to speak, but you can't just not know. And all of these DRP agreements and the way that shops believe it, and you can go on Collision Hub because everybody thinks I'm evil and I'm terrible and I'm bad for the industry and I'm a horrible person. There was one lady arguing with us last week how horrible we were that we were going to make customers pay money out of pocket, that a customer should never pay anything more than what the insurance company wants to pay. And I'm like, how terrible are you that you're going to subject customers to not having a choice to decide they want more, right? Like who's the worst evil? Me or Larry over here going, yeah, it's going to cost you $3,000 out of your pocket to pick your car up because this is what you wanted. You chose this, you picked it, or going to a DRP where you never tell them that General Motors said pull your steering column. Mike, in his presentation at SEMA, gives a statistic about, there's one particular thing an OE tells you to do, which then means this piece is non-reusable and should be ordered. But, we used to talk about it with steering columns, right? Or with Chrysler airbags. So when the steering wheel airbag deployed, you had to replace the steering column. Well, we would have like 3,000 airbags purchased that month in two columns. It was like those two things should always be together. If I'm going to have 3,000 airbags, I should have 3,000 columns. But it's an interesting piece of information. Same thing, Mike shared it, and it's just tragic because we know the shops know better. You know about safety inspections required after collision. You know about ADAS. You know about all these things, but you're not explaining them to the customers because in most shops' minds, the customer is the insurance company, and you're only supposed to communicate what the insurance company wants you to do. And the insurance company loves that because you're the one that's going to be sitting on the witness stand, much like these three Ford dealerships are sitting on a witness stand or will be. They have requested trial by jury with an undisclosed settlement amount. Folks, I just want to be very clear. Humans like to give other humans money. Humans like to blame other humans other than the victims of whatever. We like to feel when we feel sorry for somebody, we feel like they should be made whole. They should be, if just go online and look on the internet, probably just scroll your Facebook page. There's something going on in your neighborhood or your town right now that is considered a social injustice, and everybody's wanting to right that wrong. That's what happens when you go in front of a jury. That's why you ask for a jury trial. Like, I don't even have, like, I just have to present a story that makes it look like the 60-year-old man was taken advantage of, and a jury's probably going to want to reward them. That's how court works. Know that when you're a body shop, that's how court works. Like, how easy would it be for an insurer that you've pledged your life to on this DRP agreement to make it look like you were incompetent or indifferent? Because that's the only two things we're going to get to choose from. You were either incompetent and you lied, you didn't have any of this training, and you didn't go to any of these classes, you didn't do any of this, or you were indifferent. You did and you knew better. You just didn't care because you only cared for whatever amount of money the insurance company was willing to pay you. That's how the insurance company is going to paint you. And they do it over and over. Thankfully, after one of the arguments I had on Facebook where I was accused of a lot of things. Oh no, this was on LinkedIn. I've decided that I'm going to read the Gerber depositions because this is a Gerber shop manager that just didn't like anything I had to say about the State Farm Gerber deal or whatever. And DRPs are great and they put the customer first and whatever. I'm going to read those. Like I told Larry, I said, Larry, we're just going to do a whole show that you and I are reading out loud. I will play the role of the shop. You play the role of the attorney. And we're going to read the insurers' depositions. We're going to read the shop managers, the technicians. We're going to read everybody's depositions. And I think everyone needs to hear how the insurance company talks about the body shop. I think it'd be some good information. So, thank you for your online feedback on Facebook with how terrible of a person you think I am, for everything that we do with Coffee Talk. So I'm just going to read them out loud. Like we've censored them, we've kept them. I'm also going to read another case out of Hawaii. We're going to make that one public as well, to just ring in the new year. Larry's very excited. I think he's like thinking about acting. Okay, speaking of being very, very angry. All right. I kind of couldn't believe it when I read this one. And so when it first posted there around November 19th, I made a comment, like a politically correct comment. So this is why I'm like, why am I even trying to be politically correct? Right? I've got this reputation of everybody, eventually, I always tell people, eventually, if I ever became what everybody thinks I am, then the industry's probably in really a lot of trouble. So I made a tactful comment about the legality of this article completely. And I thought that someone would be smart enough, whether it was FenderBender or the author, to delete it, but they were not. And this thing came back around to me at the end of last week from an attorney on some negotiations in a case they were doing. And I just thought, well, that's it, Steve Trapp. I'm about to rip you a new hole. But more FenderBender. All right, you can go read this whole thing. This is an insurance company's wet dream of an article, which is why it should never have gotten published in the first place, but it darn sure should never have gotten published inside a collision repair industry trade magazine. So this is my call to you. Same thing if we go back to the Aztec Geico crap. If you don't send a message, what you allow will not only continue, it will get worse. So you got to send a message. Well, you can't. We ask that everybody stop doing business with Aztec. Like, hey, just send a message. We need to tell the insurers that these backroom deals with vendors aren't going to work. Most of you, a lot of you did. You called and you canceled and whatever, but a lot of people didn't. You just status quo was easier than change. So congratulations. Now we're here where we are with material agreements, and you're now going to be getting discounts on your parts, and you're going to be getting discounts on your materials that you didn't going to be eating into your already diminishing profits. But you need to cancel all the trade magazines. Just do it. Um, I know they come free, whether it's calling and saying, take me off the mailing list. I no longer want them. If it's throwing them away, if it's making a video of you lighting them on fire in the parking lot of your shop and posting it everywhere, you just need to send a message to everyone that this doesn't speak for you as an industry. So let's look at this article. So Steve Trapp was with Exalta, and now I think he's just doing independent consulting. Um, but um, there's a movement right now from the insurance companies. They're meeting with software companies or whatever, and they're trying to figure out how to reduce severity. In other words, they don't want they now they're suddenly they're scared of the total loss number. They're not really. I don't know how to explain this to people. Salvage returns are so good right now. They're not really that worried about total losses. What they are interested in is leveraging that against body shops because they know you are interested in total losses, that it's scary because you don't make money on totals. So you're terrified that you're going to lose 40% of your revenue because if total losses become 40% of reported claims. They're now leveraging that. They're trying to talk companies into making software to save cars or whatever. So I think I'm going to think that Steve here got caught up in hearing some of that and thought, oh, this is a good thing, and didn't quite understand what the insurers are actually doing, right? They're leveraging body shops against themselves for deeper discounts. Now, if you read the article, here's what it comes up with. Basically, you shops should be doing everything you can to not total cars. Huge legality issue, specifically if we look at what's going on in Florida on the case where the rental car company is being sued because they sold the car on a clean title and the next person was hurt. That's not new. The farm had a lawsuit on that. I want to say 25, 26 years ago, maybe even longer. I'm losing track of time. Maybe 30 something years ago out of Ohio on not branding cars. Like the allegation is that we intentionally tried to keep cars with clean titles so that they would stay on the road or that we would get better salvage returns on them. And then those cars are repaired unbeknownst to consumers because they have clean titles but crappy collision repair on them, and then it causes an injury. All right, so if you are engaging in some sort of activity as a repairer to keep a car from totaling, it costs what it costs to fix a car. So you have to not do something, or you're going to do something for free or whatever. And if you don't fix that car right, and there's this discovery that happens in which you were well aware that the car should have totaled, but then you took maneuvers or measures to keep it from totaling, you've gone from like negligence in a lawsuit to gross negligence. There was this intentional indifference to the life of the consumer. You were only worried about profit and being able to keep a vehicle. It's extremely dangerous. So if we go back and say that court's a narrative, right? It's a story, and I'm going to tell a story to a bunch of humans that don't want to blame the victim. They want to blame somebody else and reward them. That's what court is. You have to be very careful of the story you're going to present. So this is just bad all around. But the insurance companies know that you're worried. So we're going to get you to worry about total losses. It is what it is. You've heard Larry say it for years. You've heard me say it for years. I don't total cars, insurance companies do. I write estimates for repair. If you decide to total it, great. You want to pay me to fix it? Great, but that's not the decision I make. In this article, Steve tells body shops that you should have two different labor rates. You should have a labor rate for insurance companies, specific carriers based on total losses. And his example, from his words, was, let's say, for example, your door rate is 80 or you charge 80. To keep the car from totaling, you'll charge 65. The other things that he tells you to do in this article is that you should discount parts, like you should figure out what your profit is on the parts and then figure out how much of that profit you want to give up on the parts. And that you should use a discount and paint system so that you could charge less for materials. So you may spray a Highline product. So let's say you're, this is not a great example, but I'm going to use it for a plug opportunity. I'm a big fan of Glazer at 90 line. Love that thing. I love PPG's EnviroBase, right? Like I'm standing here holding my PPG coffee cup this morning. I cut my teeth. My first water product I ever sprayed was EnviroBase. But let's say I'm spraying 90 line. And then what he's suggesting is that I would go and get Boslock to spray on the cars that I'm trying to save. Now, I think Boslock is as good. I'm not supposed to say that either. But I, I love polyester waters. I just do, right? That product has color match. It has everything on it. I sent it to Casey down in Fort Worth for him to start messing with it. You know, he doesn't do collision; he does custom cars and custom work or whatever. I was like, go play with bot like this. I really like it, but Casey will give me really good feedback. So, all right, the problem. These are the three things that insurance companies want you to do right now. So if we go back to the when the State Farm contract before it came out that said they were going to do materials discounts. I have emails from State Farm claims managers telling body shops, well, hey, we're going to come up with our rates. We're not going to pay anymore. We're not going to pay material invoices. You guys should probably go to a lower brand of paint if you think you want to make money. And I thought, my God, why do I have a State Farm direct repair manager telling body shops to change their paint lines? Then that whole contract came out that said they were about to cut material deals. Oh, that's why, right? They're going to set a rate and they're basically saying, you want to make money, you're going to have to spray something else because we're not going to, we're not going to pay this competitive rate anymore. You have insurance companies cutting OEM parts deals in which they get discounts. So you think that you're making, maybe you're down at the Chevy store and you've got a Chevy dealership and they're cutting you 30% off list or 36 or 37% off list and you're feeling pretty good about it. State Farm is about to take a chunk of that. And all insurance companies are doing that. And then you have the lowering of labor rates, right? They've come back and they've lowered the labor rates by $10 or $8 or whatever in a marketplace. What you allow doesn't continue, it gets worse. If you start dropping labor rates, if you start giving discounts because you're trying to save cars from totals, then that's your new rate. You're willing to do work for that. So you don't get to say, well, I'm only willing to do work for that if it means I'm going to get to keep the car. No, 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 that's not how the market works. So when we're setting a market rate, I always tell people you're only as good as your worst repair. You can only charge what your least amount is. That's the way it works. So you're going to have an insurance company walk in and go, hey, thanks for that. Thanks for lowering the labor rate on that total loss. We're now only going to pay $65 at your shop for everything that comes through. And you're going to be like, I just wanted to do that for that one. And go, no, no. If you can do it for one claim, one repairable car, you agreed to do it for $65, then you can do it for all of them. That's your market rate. Everything in this article is such bad advice. I still can't believe it got published. The insurer sent it to me to say, look, Kristen, everything that we're doing, you have an industry trade publication suggesting the same things to a body shop. Why are you making me to be the bad guy? And I didn't have a response. He wasn't wrong, right? It's like, I mean, I'm going to have to get back to you on that. I had thought maybe by my politically correct comment on LinkedIn that someone would look at that and go, you know what? I never thought of that legality angle. I should probably delete this article. Nope, still up there, still on FenderBender, still circulating around. So I feel like I gave you a chance to do the right thing before this, but no. So shops, I know you're worried about total losses. I know you're worried about repairables, specifically if you're on flat rate. This article talks about how you would negotiate different rates of pay for your technicians to keep them busy, which is everybody's worried about. I know that that's a concern. This is why for the last 10 years we've been telling you you've got to get off flat rate. You've got to get off flat rate. You're going to have to put your employees on hourly or salary because the industry completely is going to shift where finally that old model's just not going to work. You're going to have to change everything about how you do business. Like I always tell people, yeah, I was born into this, right? Like this, like from the day one to day 52, this is or year 52. This is all I know, right? that old model sort of worked. It is not going to work. I don't even see it working in 20. It's not working now, if we're honest, but I don't see it working in 2026. So, um, but, but you can't. You can't change your rates when they're convenient for you and then try to charge more when it's convenient then. Like you don't just get to pick and choose those things. That's not going to play well in a jury, right? Like they're going to come in and go, well, here's 50 something repairables the shop uploaded at $65 an hour. That's their rate. And then you're going to try to sit in front of a jury and go, well, we agreed to do it for less so the car wouldn't total. Then the jury's going to go, well, what? You charge more for a newer car when you think that you can get paid for it. So then they're going to think that you're price gouging, which is the words that you hear most insurance adjusters say about you. So um this is dangerous. And I think that part of our problem with our trade mags and not I think the people at the trade magazines are very good people. They're journalists who got a journalism degree and went to work for a magazine. Like they're not in this industry. They didn't grow up in it. They don't understand the nuances of insurance companies and claims and whatever. They republish press releases more than anything. Um, we just got to cut them off because it doesn't look good when a shiny magazine has the cover blown up poster board size and whatever, and it's brought into a courtroom and it's shown in front of a bunch of people, and then it makes the shops that are saying, this is what I charge and you should pay me, I should be compensated for what I do. It makes those shops look like the greedy ones, and it goes, well, your industry, these are your publications, these are your industry. It's like Wall Street Journal saying something, right? Like these are what your people are telling you to do. And there's just a lot of, we're allowing anyone to be a consultant these days. And then that, and in fairness, some of that could be aimed at myself as well, right? I get a lot of flack when you're from the insurance industry, you're a Trojan horse sent in here to to send us all down the wrong path. If I'm from the industry, I'm or the insurance, I'm sorely underpaid. But 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 I mean, so that's fair. We just there's just a lot of people that want to be relevant, and so the trade press will take an article from anybody. Um, and there are some good people like Anderson was writing for Autobody News for a while or whatever. There's some good people that can write articles, but there's no vetting. Larry used to do that for ABRN and a couple other magazines. He was like the tech person, and they would send him articles and he would slash them and send them back. And they would go, but we promised we would publish this because a paint company bought a 4-page spread or whatever. And so then Larry gets fired and he's no longer the technical editor at any of these magazines for the last 10 or 15 years. But I think you just have to send a message. You just need to cancel all of that. This particular article is dangerous. I think what's really dangerous for me is it validated what the insurers are doing to body shops. So you had SCRS go to the open mic at CIC and stomp their little feet and have their little open mic session about how mad they were at State Farm reducing labor rate in the markets. And then you have somebody that you guys say you like that writes an article that says a shop should just reduce the labor rate to keep cars from totaling. So there are consequences. If you read this article, please don't do it. I understand your struggles with totals. I understand your fear of losing, repairables, and I get all of that, but there's a consequence for it. So whatever you write is what you're willing to do. I always tell people it doesn't matter what you're surveyed at. The survey was always worthless. It only matters what you're uploading. And so what that labor rate that you put on those estimates, that's where all of the market data comes from. That's where testimony comes from. Okay, so let's talk about testimony a little bit, understanding your tools. And I'm going to fly through this one because I knew this was going to be a long one. But so a lot of these posts are popping up about estimating systems, reducing labor times. Everyone's been particularly tracking bedside panels, lots of different things. And then blend times. Obviously, we knew no one was ever going to honor the blend study, but more and more vocalization of estimating systems and insurance companies not honoring them. And so I thought, well, probably we should talk about that a little bit. So if you read the premise of every estimating system, it'll tell you it's new and undamaged panels on new and undamaged cars. And so that's not what we deal with. So every estimating system out there doesn't apply to what you do. It's a guide, right? It's not a rule. There's nothing that says that, that I even have to use one if I'm going to appraise a car. If you look at Progressive's policy, so this is Progressive's Colorado auto policy, and you look at a lot of insurers, insurers get to decide how they want to pay a claim, indemnification. Unfortunately, throughout the years, a lot of people have thought that that's how you write an estimate. Like there's an estimate to repair my car, and so this is what you have to pay me. But that's not how it works at all. If we go back to like General Claim Memo 430 or I'm sorry, 139 or whatever back there. So when I started in claims, there used to be this big manual at the back of every claims office that took up like a 6 foot table. And it was the processes and procedures for handling claims at State Farm. And so you had all these general claims memos. And one of them was that as an adjuster, I got to decide how to settle the claim. One of the tools I could choose for, and it listed one, two, three, four of the different ways. One of the tools was an estimate completed by a State Farm estimator back when we had estimate units. That was one of them. And then there were three others. Now, when I got into claims, I wasn't a big fan of our estimator group based on some fights my dad had had. And I thought, I can't believe you guys hired me because I'm about to like wreck this place from the inside out, right? So I'm an adjuster and I have these estimators. Well, the estimators had watched me grow up from the time I was a little kid to whatever. And I think they thought that they could probably tell me what to do. Or influence me. And so I photocopied that page and I would hold it up and go, you are a tool to use at my discretion. I can use your estimate, I can edit your estimate, or I can throw your estimate away. And they would come by and go, but I promised the shop you were going to pay this. Well, you shouldn't have done that because I'm not paying your estimate. It's garbage and I'm going to write my own or I'm going to do whatever. And so I loved having that little claim memo. But even though the manual is gone, it's still a principle and you can still read things in policy. So if we look at Progressive's policy here, it says which it's in bold, right? And we remember that we told that when you have something in bold, it usually has a definition. So we, Progressive, may use estimating, appraisal, or injury evaluation systems to assist us, Progressive, in adjusting claims under this policy and to assist us, Progressive, in determining the amount of damages, expenses, or loss payable under this policy. Such systems may be developed by us, Progressive, which means they can develop their own software. So if I'm going to go work with like a Mitchell or a CCC, I can influence and develop my own software. It's in the policy. Or a third party, which I could just use the normal database, and may include computer software databases and specialized technology. So this is a insurer explaining to you that they can do whatever they want. They can write an estimate. They can use public software. They can use their own software. They can use their own database. They can just throw a number out and say, I'm willing to settle for this. It doesn't have to be any sort of like unbiased thing. In fact, we can develop it. It can be their own software. So when we talk about the influence that insurance companies have on software and estimating systems, this is the policy backing and explanation of it. So things that you need to know. Well, that means as a tool, I can use the database. I cannot. I can handwrite an estimate. And I do that exercise in an estimating class where we'll go out and look at a car and everybody will come in and they'll get on their Mitchell or the CCC or what they're on, and they'll start writing an estimate. I'll start writing it on the whiteboard and just leaving. I need to call on a part price for the headlamp and I need to call on a part price for whatever. And I'll handwrite an estimate on what I think I want to do what for my labor rates. I'll call and get the parts. Typically in the class, I don't call. I go, okay, somebody tell me what the part price is for this. And I add it up and I'm usually a couple $100 away from what everybody is with their computerized estimating system. And I'm like, this is why you people literally don't know how to write anymore. You know how to point and click. But I don't have to do it. You literally can write your estimates on a handwritten sheet and just say parts, $5,000, labor, $10,000, paint, $3,000, my cost to fix the car, 5,300 and something. There's nothing unless your state has a little bit more itemization. Typically, when I read state laws on itemization, it wants parts and labor separated. That's it. Okay, great, done. There's nothing that says that you have to do all that. The more that you write in those systems, the more that you follow whatever process the insurer wants you to do, which we go into that, we go back to that State Farm letter. It says, please tell your shop to follow the supplement process as outlined and whatever. I don't have to do any of that, right? Like, here's my estimate. If we go back to where it was in the 70s, I hand wrote an estimate and handed it across, and the customer went and turned it into their insurance agent or the adjuster or whatever. Um, those are the tools that are at your disclosure, are at your disposal to use. You don't have to do anything. There's nothing, unless you're a DRP, there's nothing that says you have to do anything. I'm not so sure that one of the ways to write this industry isn't to have a bunch of shops to stop using computerized estimate. You can like still have it for your own, but like write an estimate and turn it in. The insurers want you to submit through their system so that their artificial intelligence can audit your estimate. That's where you get change requests. That's not an adjuster reading your estimate and typing those change requests in. All that stuff's automated. So their ability to do that, it almost would be like if we could reset the scales, if we could go back in time, maybe get a little vintage in our claim handling, it would take away some of the AI that's in play and maybe make people actually learn to be an adjuster again. In other words, can we break the system? Can you break it? Maybe we can, maybe we can't. I don't know. I would sure like to try to do that. So just keep in mind when you're going through these estimating systems and you're upset that something changed, a labor time changed or whatever, there is nothing in the world that says that you can't change that labor time to what you know it needs to be. All right, let's talk about Honda and the aftermarket headlamps. We shared a video not too long ago of a technician at a Honda dealership sort of saying, guess what? It's another aftermarket headlamp when it comes to a battery and a draw issue. This was posted in the estimating group, an ADAS company having trouble with calibrations, et cetera. It comes back to an aftermarket headlamp failure in a circuit. There is a lot of this happening lately. Personally, I would like to say that because I covered the Kappa email system on a show that they decided to take it down. From what I'm hearing, it's really more of this. There's more problems around the electrical components that people are trying to make aftermarket now. We see aftermarket sensors for ADAS, blind spot monitors, all that kind of stuff. We see aftermarket headlamps, aftermarket windshields. And so there's sort of a desire to kind of, I think, not share so much of that. So just know that there are problems with aftermarket electrical components in vehicles. It seems to be mostly every time I see a post anywhere, it's over a Honda. So whatever it is with Hondas that doesn't like those. This came out, another case against State Farm. UIM, uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage, is sort of like you get to treat yourself like a third party. Here's what's interesting in it is that we tried to do specialization in claims and it made everybody stupid. In that you have all these different silos. Like I have a legal case that's criminal right now, and State Farm sold the car, and it was like, who you were served a preservation notice, but that got sent to like the BI adjuster that never notified the physical damage, total loss people, and the car got sold. So they violated a preservation order. And I'm like, oh, that's fun, right? Like, but there's more and more of this happening, right hand, left hand, field adjuster versus in-house versus a total loss adjuster, that they all have their own little silo and they don't really understand that everything on a claim. This one's very interesting. The customer wanted to accept the policy limits of the other party, which were 30,000, and notified State Farm that they wanted to accept them. State Farm said yes and waived subrogation on the 30, which allows the customer to keep it. Because the principle of whole, which we talk about all the time when they're reducing shop expenses on total losses, the customer isn't made whole, but you still sell the salvage and regain the profit from that. So I think we have an issue. So they waived subro. And then the customer came back and said, okay, now I would like 20,000 under my UIM coverage. And State Farm went no. So they filed a suit, and State Farm went, well, you can't. There's a because it's 50,000, the 30 and the 20, it has to go to circuit court. And they argued, no, I don't want 50, I want 20. And State Farm was like, no, 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 you have to add the two together. And this judge came back and said, you don't get to count the 30 because you waived your subro. So you agreed to the 30. There's nothing to argue there. We're only arguing over the 20. And so that makes the court case cheaper. It makes it easier in a lot of things. But it was just a reminder to me of how no one thinks about the next step. I think that's probably true on the collision repair side as well. But it's really bad on claims right now because you have so much turnover. I mean, we thought that physical damage was something that didn't have to have intelligence. Well, only the homeowners people need policy training, or this is just processing, right? The body shops are going to do all the work. We're just going to have people that sort of supervise them and issue checks. Well, as they've done that and then all this turnover, you have no intelligence. There's no history. There's no depth. There's no whatever in claims. And they're just making silly mistakes. And I think what's even crazier for me is that the outside counsel has been lowered. Like they're paying like 65 to $100 an hour. And you can't get an attorney for that's worth anything. And so even the outside counsel they're using is giving insurance companies bad advice or making bad assumptions. And you listen to them on their pleadings, their filings half the time, and you go, did you graduate law school? I mean, like we had the case like 3 or 4 weeks ago where a law firm had one of the interns write it, but the intern used Chat GPT and really screwed up everything and angered the judge. But that was a whole other issue, so to speak. But that one's interesting to watch. And speaking of interesting things to watch, this is another one to keep an eye on. So Delightful is a big company. They're consultants. They do a lot. They were accused recently of using fake research and putting it in a report that it gave to a client, which happened to be some government within Canada. And that this fake AI research was part of the proposal and what needed to be done, and so it's caused a stir. The problem with artificial intelligence is sort of the problem with the internet, right? Prior to the internet, if you wanted to be published, you generally had to submit your work to a journal or you had to submit it to a publishing house, and they would fact check you and do whatever. You couldn't just, make up stuff and put it out there. The internet, almost anybody can get published. Well, I guess as evident by what was published in FenderBender, anybody can get published, and there's no review process. There's no fact checking. There's kind of nothing that goes on. Now, all of that's out there becomes the basis of what artificial intelligence uses to give an opinion. And it's why so much of AI right now is wrong. On the legal side, you just see report after report where somebody used AI and the answer is completely wrong. My kid used AI last year on a report, and we were going over. I was like, these history facts are completely wrong. Like I had to go look it up and show him, but it's just because the bad intel in, bad intel out, so to speak. CCC was bragging that recently they've been meeting with their clients, which are insurance companies, not you body shops, and that they're going to see more shops. So the insurance companies want ease, they want speed, they want STP, straight through processing. And so the way we do that is we get more of you people to be compliant. So if more of you body shops would just do it the way they want you to do and use the software they want you to use, it would be so much easier for the insurance companies. And so CCC is offering to bundle different products together to save the insurance companies money. And then you shops need to start using AI. And I see all of these presentations and articles coming out. There's the body shop guy that, I forget his little name, little short guy from Canada, Ryan Taylor. Telling you shops, you guys need to do more AI. It's the only way forward. Now, I agree, there is some AI usage that we're going to have to get to in the shops, but it damn sure is not AI estimating. So when you think about it, the insurers set the rules. If you want to go read this, it's the insurers' AI, and they let the body shops use it. Why would you do that? Why in the world would you let them tell you how to get an estimate started? So here's what we know. We know humans don't like to add. They will take the path of least resistance. So whatever that estimate starts with, they're going to go, yeah, that's good. Because in their mind, they're going to go, whatever, if it gets in here for repair, we'll just write a supplement, no matter. You're going to get dumber. You're going to rely on that more as a crutch. And then it's bad information in, bad information out. So that actually the estimates will just get worse and worse and worse because you're training them to be worse and worse and worse. So please don't do AI estimating in your body shop. There are some ways to add some estimating services. There's people that can help you with that. There's different ways to, but adopting one of the estimating systems AIs as a way to help you jumpstart your estimating or to write for whatever is a really bad thing. We're learning more and more and more every day how bad artificial intelligence is right now, just because it's just not ready. I read a couple of articles that says we're pushing it too fast right now. Like we haven't weeded out, we haven't been able to refine the database. I've talked to some companies that are leaning on maybe centralizing what data is going to feed the artificial intelligence so you can make sure it's the right people that your people are getting the information from. But right now, it's just a bad thing. I want to talk about our ADAS group. So our 20 groups, we expanded and added a new one, had its first meeting on October 20th. Their next meeting is December 22nd. Really fantastic. Last Monday night's presentation, they went and showed why you can't have the paint booth running if you're going to try to do ADAS calibrations inside your shop. So even if you were a shop that thought, I got a level floor, I think I've got the right lighting, I'm going to do calibrations, how if the paint booth is running, what it will do to your calibrations. And I had never thought of that before. And I was like, well, damn. So now I got to have the light right. The floor's got to be right. I got to tell everybody to stop working. And kind of interesting, it goes back to the Shark. If any of you ever worked on the Shark measuring system, that ultrasonic measuring, it was great, unless there was any sound in the body shop. So the shops that I had that used to use it would be measuring a car, and then I'd walk up and start clapping my hands, and they would just look at me like, we hate you. I'm like, I know it's fun, it's right. But very, very similar. So this group is fantastic. I'm learning a lot. I needed to learn a lot. I needed to have that a fresh perspective, but something I'd never thought about. I never thought about whether if the paint booth was running, it would blow up my ability to do a competent ADAS calibration. And then I'm going to wrap this up just by sharing an interesting story. So the holiday weekends with Thanksgiving, and I was out and running around, and I ran into one of my heroes in a parking garage of all places. One of my very first managers at State Farm. I think she's a policy genius and guru. I learned more by sitting in her office and having her yell at me than anything else. And so I was able to run into her. But one of the discussions and what we ended up talking about through the whole thing was sort of this. So she's with a bunch of retirees, and I still let all those guys get together, right? All the old retired State Farm agents, State Farm employees get together and have conversations. Apparently, they're listening to Coffee Talk, so I'm very glad that you're listening. And then I saw this interview with Jocko Willnick, the SEAL. He's got a great, I think it's Echelon is his consulting group for leadership. And he's talking about this, how he learned to speak enlisted and then he learned to speak officer or whatever. And in the interview, he talks about how he got to the Pentagon and he would go into all these meetings and he was just a lowly enlisted guy sitting in the back of the room, but he got to be in on all these conversations. And so that was really where sort of I spent so many years sitting in rooms with a pen and paper taking notes and never speaking so that people would forget I was there. I'll still have people call me and go, you said you were at this meeting, but I don't ever remember you being there. And I'm like, I can tell you where it was at and what day it was and how many people were there. And they're like, I don't remember you there. And I go, I know, because I sat in the back of the room and I didn't say a word. Like just the soaking it in kind of thing. And Jocko talks about how that really helped his career. He was able to, listen to generals, 4-star generals talk about things from a different perspective than he would have. And he learned. All that to say for you shops, you need to go listen to different perspectives and get around different people, whether that's joining a business group that's maybe through your chamber of commerce or whatever. Get outside of this collision industry because we see things one way because we just eat, sleep, and breathe this. And it's hard for us to imagine, just like the people that get online and argue with me and go, that's not fair and that shouldn't be this and this should be that. I see why you see it that way. I need you to see it from this other perspective over here, whether that's learning how to tell a narrative to a jury or whatever. So as you know, I'm standing in this parking lot having this conversation with this hero of mine and going, "Oh my God, I'm so glad I ran into her. I probably never said thank you the way I should have." It didn't hurt my feelings when you yelled at me. I was like, let's learn more. Um, those conversations when I was that young was because my perspective was 100% from a body shop perspective. And I had to learn how to come have another perspective. Shops, you're going, please get out. Like, force yourself. I know that you don't think you can get away from your shop right now and you feel but go join something, you know, whether it's a speaking group, maybe it's Toastmasters, maybe it's a business networking group in your community. Please go join it. Sit there for the first little bit and just be quiet and listen. But so even if you're not part presentations and doing all that, like some people I know are in these BNI groups and they're doing presentations, they're rock stars, right? But maybe that's not you. Maybe you just want to go sit and listen, but force yourself out of your comfort zone, because you will learn things that you didn't even know you needed to know. And you'll get so much better at talking to your customers because you'll just learn to see things from different perspectives. As people talk about their businesses and their challenges in their business, you'll find synergies and challenges. And you know, the lady that owns the nail salon on the other end of town or the hair salon is dealing with some of the same issues you are dealing with right now. So do that. You can find Jocko's video where he talks about sitting in rooms and listening to people talk, and then how he's used that. That's available on YouTube. You can get to that and watch through that. So that's it. I hope you guys have an amazing week. It's December. We got 30 something more days to end this year. You got taxes to wrap up. You've got a lot of stuff. If you're worried about taxes and finances, well, we've got Rachel James. You can always reach out to Rachel. She'd be happy to help. And just keep doing what you're doing. Independence, whatever you are, we need everybody to stay. We need you happy and healthy and in this industry. So if you got questions, well, you know how to reach Melanie and Holly. They'd be happy to talk to you this week while they're playing cleanup for all the messes I made while they were gone and all the emails I didn't respond to that were supposed to be being forwarded to me, but I just kind of forgot them. So there's that. You guys may want to just send them a gift basket of sympathy or whatever. I'll see you next Monday on Coffee Talk. Thanks, guys.